Hey, it is June 12th, 2025, 4 p.m., and I call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is consent items. I have not received any questions about consent items. Have you, Scott?
Nothing.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
okay, so we have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? So motion carries.
Opposed or abstained?
No, I'm opposed.
Okay.
Okay, motion carries 3. Next item is the Lido Communication Plan.
Thank you. So good afternoon. As part of this team's ongoing commitment to financial discipline and operational transparency, I'd like to highlight the strategy and communication efforts surrounding the Lido office here at 200 Bailey Ranch Road. After careful consideration, the decision was made to cease member-facing operations at this building on Friday, August the 1st. Now, as you're aware, this move is not just about exiting the building, but it's also about aligning with and reinforcing our mission to deliver safe and reliable power at the lowest possible price. We've taken deliberate steps to maximize the value of this asset. The facility has been prepared for sale, including the removal of TCEC specific signage, infrastructure, and other things. While one low offer has been received, there are multiple viable discussions underway. To us, what's just as important is how we communicate this change to the members. A very focused communication plan was already submitted to Board of Fed for your review. The central theme is very clear. The proceeds from the sale of this building will directly be used to reduce the debt and line of credit and interest expense the members have been paying for 5 or 6 years in this building. All of this benefits current and future members while preserving reliability. This plan reflects our evolving operational footprint, our attention to member experience, our ability to turn real estate into real savings. We appreciate your support as we pursue decisions that align with and support the values and the bottom line. Were there any questions about the communication plan for this building? You may have seen some signs coming in. You'll notice more in the near future via social media, the magazine, certainly reaching out proactively to members who do use this building, even though it's only been open for a few years, making contact with them as well. So are there any questions about that communication plan?
That's good.
If not, I'm happy to move on to the next topic if you'd like.
Go ahead.
So agenda item number 4, the cybersecurity moment. You may have noticed in the president's report, there were 4 topics related to cybersecurity, specifically 3 of them just above the cybersecurity video update, dealt with 2 vendor issues and 1 training issue we're doing with employees to make us more prepared for cybersecurity issues. To tie those things together, we're going to show a video today that will emphasize the importance of cybersecurity maintenance and steps that you've already taken, like using multiple factor authentication for your software, password protection, things of that nature. So with that in mind, the chair and I have talked about implementing a short monthly video. This one's on cybersecurity. There'll be approximately 3 minutes in length for all board members. This initiative mirrors the ongoing training completed by all employees, including myself. It also reinforces our shared responsibility in protecting the cooperative and our members from cyber threats. These monthly videos will serve as an important reminder for current and future board members about the necessity of using secure software and strong passwords when conducting cooperative business. This month, we're going to focus on email. Email has become important in exchanging information, even with attachments and documents, but they can make us susceptible to cyber criminals. We'll be watching The Art of Phishing, that's a PH, The Art of Phishing, which describes how emails can be used to gain access to confidential information. So let me prepare that video and we'll proceed with that. So obviously there's a lot of basics in these videos. These are produced by the software company we use, used by a lot of utilities in our industry. So we've been doing this for years on a monthly basis. My employees will get an email like this and we'll watch a video, check off that we've watched it, that sort of thing. But sometimes they may use cartoon figures and voices, but I appreciate you guys playing along. I'm sure like me, everybody has received a video or a email like that in the past. Seems like they're starting to happen more and more often. I probably get 6 to 12 a day on average, I guess. I'm sure you guys are starting to get them as well. So if you use Outlook, there's some tools in there where you can report them, fish them. But I'm sure your software provider has something as well, just to make sure that it doesn't impact you. So do be careful for those. If any questions about the intent or where we're headed with that topic? I will give two quick updates to show how practical this is. First, our insurance coverage from our cyber coverage was renewed on April 1st, so we're in the early part of a new phase there. This type of educational effort, along with other things we've done, demonstrated to them we're making good faith effort. So hopefully they will continue to offer that insurance to us. That is a shrinking market. There's not a lot of providers that offer those services. So everything we can do to make sure we're eligible will definitely be helpful in that regard.
What do they cover?
It's a very detailed packet. We may have sent some federated information to you recently. I want to be careful with specific names, but let me give you more questions offline if I could, as far as what they cover. We are using the maximum coverage they allow us. Secondly, and this is kind of new, but you can see this coming. Your financial auditors were here last week, the week before. One of the things they specifically asked about was our cyber protection processes, protocols, things of that nature. And you think about a financial auditor coming in, but that's kind of where this is all headed, cyber insurance, financial auditors, it makes sense. So it gave us comfort that one, we've already been doing these things. Two, that the board's also doing 2FA, multiple factor authentication, things of that nature, and that the board would be willing to check this out. So all of that went very well for Tri-County Electric. We appreciate you guys being a good example in that regard. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to move on to item number 5 on the agenda if you'd like.
Okay, you have any questions?
So this next topic, I want to start slowly with. We've been very careful about this very lengthy name, the 2025 Energy Efficiency Rebate Pilot Program. So several things I want to point out here. One, 2025, maybe there'll be one in 2026, maybe there won't. We'll see what we learn. We'll see the feedback we get and the success of the program. It is an energy efficiency rebate program, and we'll talk more about that. And finally, at the end, you're going to see the words pilot program. We're emphasizing, we're learning from this. We're going to see how it goes. We'll evaluate it. A decision could be made on next year. So with that context, since April of 2024, the cooperative has owned two very clear objectives: to improve the financial health of the cooperative and to enhance member service. Many of the things we've done affect both of those. This topic today does one of those things effectively without harming the other. So it's always nice when that happens. That's a clean win in my book. But before we talk about this, I want to clear up any confusion. I know we spoke about this a few months ago and we've written about it, but I don't think we can communicate well enough on this aspect of it. This doesn't cost members a dime. It does not contribute to their power bill. As you're aware, the funding for this program comes 100% from unclaimed funds. That's capital credit checks that are 3 years old and older that the state allows a cooperative use. And the state allows the cooperative to use it for 3 specific purposes, as outlined here: scholarships, economic development, and energy efficiency. So the state regulates what it can be used for, how we can use it. And so we don't have a choice to do anything else with it. And the beautiful part about that is it doesn't impact members' bills. So I don't think we can state that enough to make sure there's no confusion about that. When we think about Tri-County Electric and our membership and what it looks like related to these 3 buckets, we are a very heavily residential focused cooperative. The overwhelming majority of our cooperative is residential. So it does make sense financially that mostly the scholarships and the energy efficiency be the heavier part of our concentration of that. And it is, and it will remain as such. Nothing against economic development. We have an amount in there as well for the chambers of commerce, because there is an effect on our members from there. But the majority of the benefit to our members will come in this 3rd bucket right here. And so you're going to see that reflected in this effort, in other efforts like it.
So what would that percentage be offhand? Do you know?
I do. It's roughly, we're doing math in real time here. So 6, 9, and almost half is in this energy efficiency bucket right now. And it's gonna stay heavy like that as well. And if you think about the why, it makes sense because we want the members to have access to this fund. So you all remember a couple of months ago, we first started talking about this in the April board meeting. And there's some discussion there, and we appreciate that, to make sure that once this got in place, they did shortly in early April there, it was retroactive to January 1st of this year for all members who met these requirements in the calendar year 2025. They were eligible for these rebates. Now, this encourages members to do things that can help them from that perspective. But this was first mentioned at the April 2nd board meeting. Our goal was very clear then, and it's still very clear now, to disperse the full 250,000 that was allocated to that. We want to use it all as soon as we can on the members that qualify for it. We don't want to hold that. Our goal is to support members now as quickly as possible. And the pilot program phase of this is, when that money is exhausted, another informed decision can be made of what could, if anything, come next. So that is our goal, and I'll be very candid about this. People of my generation might remember rebates from a manufacturer, particularly technology, or particularly when cell phones first came out. Can't believe I'm that guy now. But it used to be the thing that a rebate was offered from manufacturers, and you had to go through all these hoops to get them. They made it very difficult, very cumbersome. And then if you ever could cross that bar of all the documentation required, it took forever to get the rebate. That's not what we're doing here, and we're going to prove that in a minute. We're doing the exact opposite here. We're getting the rebates to members quickly, within hours or days. And so I want to distinguish that up front. When we say rebates, we mean rebates. Big difference there. So the initial launch, you may remember, we shared it in a multitude of ways. We used the website, we used a news release, where anybody can see it. We sent it to all the members we have on record in current conversations via email. We established a dedicated webpage. We used some social media as well. You'll see some of the language here that was used to first describe it, and we're still using the same type of language. But this is how it was shared very transparently on the website, showing both programs, what you've got to do, the requirements, everything associated with it. Since that first launch, you may have noticed a rebate payment tracker. I call it the scorecard. If the goal is to disperse the 250,000 to members who qualify for it, I want to see how we're doing. So this is where I go to see, and you and members are welcome to go there as well. It's updated every week, and our goal is to help the members, and that's the way we want to do that. We shared this on some of our personal social media. We want to do everything we can to communicate it as many ways as we can, because we really want members to have that. This isn't the old school rebate from the manufacturer, okay? So what changed about a month later? I told y'all back in April, we're going to be aggressive about it. We're going to be aggressive with it. The goal is to disperse the 250,000 in an ethical way that represents the requirements of the program with documentation. If we're going to keep score, we're going to win. So in April, in May 12th, we raised the HVAC bill credit from 75 to 125. And much like when we first put the program in place in April, we made it retroactive for anybody January 1st and beyond. We did the same thing in principle here with this extra $50 to those who had already applied or received credit for this. They just got the additional $50. They didn't have to do anything. It just showed up on their account very soon thereafter. Everybody that applied from this point forward in May will get the 125 if they qualify for the HVAC bill credit. Now, that was important to us. It definitely encourages, and we've seen evidence of this, we'll show you in a minute, some of the numbers. It encourages people to spread the word and communicate. And I want to focus on why we're fixated on that third bucket of energy efficiency. And within energy efficiency, why are we going here first? As you guys are aware, heating and cooling for a residential situation typically consumes over 50% of your kilowatt hours purchased. It is the largest single source that contributes to energy bills, whether it's natural gas or electricity. Because the members' bills are determined by volume, the volume of kWhs they consume, this is the biggest bang for the buck. Having regular HVAC maintenance can do three things for them. Two of them benefit them financially. One is a peace of mind and a health benefit. Financially, tuning up the HVA system, as you're aware, can make it more efficient, consume less KWHs right then, saves money on the power bill the next month. That's a great win. Maintaining that system also extends the useful life of it. These things are thousands of dollars of expense. It's very expensive for a homeowner or someone to have an HVAC system. So you want to extend the life of that system as long as we can. Those are two tangible financial benefits to members. And then the third, the quality of life, it improves the air quality in the home by filtering airborne particles. So that's important to have these benefits. But if you think on a practical level, depending on the size of the HVAC system, depending on where the member is located, 125 can pay for some HVAC system tune-ups. It can completely cover the cost of some. For others, it may cover a significant portion of the cost, so the member would only have to come out of pocket for a little bit. Either way, it's a really good return on investment from the member's perspective, and it doesn't cost our other members anything. There's no subsidization here. So that's really important to us. We promised you we'd be aggressive on it, and we are. So the question I would ask if I were in your shoes is, well, how's that going? Well, here's some results. We'll look qualitatively and quantitatively. Results so far, as of the date this information was shared with you all, we've seen an additional 323 applications for the HVAC program since the May 12th expansion, and another 260 were approved since the May 12th expansion. So it's a very high pass rate. And all we've got to do is just document it is with a licensed HVAC technician. The bar is really simple, it's really clear, and it's really low. The overwhelming majority of the 69,000, or roughly 70,000, has been in HVAC rebates, and that's a good thing because we think that can help the members the most. There is another component that's typically going to be applied to Energy Star appliances, $50, and members are eligible for both the HVAC and the Energy Star appliance. So they can get both, but the most bang for the buck is for sure going to be with the HVAC system. Now, we did tag the cities we serve on some of the social media. We've seen some feedback from that as well. But when we look at this quantitatively, and again, I put the scoreboard at the bottom, everybody's going to see it's on the website every week and it's updated. We'll definitely look at the results this way and continue to measure it. Our goal would be to get all this 250,000 out to the members as soon as we can. If we look at the run rate, the dates and the numbers, and project that out at the same rate, by the time we get to December, it may be a close call if we can get the members to take all 250,000. That's our goal. We're going to turn up our effort, and I'll show you more of that in a minute. That's how we're going to evaluate success. We've received direct private feedback and social media feedback on this topic from Michael A. here. I won't say his last name. He wrote, he submitted his HVAC tune-up receipt and it was approved within 2 hours. The credit is visible on my account. Thanks. We've received numerous replies like this because when you think of rebates, at least people from my generation do, you think of snail mail, something coming months down the road, if then, if ever. Not so. Log on your account and you will see it within days, certainly within weeks, and sometimes within hours, depending on the volume and what's being processed right then. So that's our goal. If nothing changed, if we're not any more successful, this mathematically will run out in December. My goal, because we're coming into heating season, is as many people as possible take advantage of this, and it would exhaust sooner. The sooner the better. Again, it doesn't cost our members anything. It can only help them. There's no reason why we wouldn't tell everybody we know about it. And I'll spoil the punchline. We're going to ask everybody we know to tell somebody to know about it. So how are we communicating it? Well, we did another news release. We've done more social media releases since then as well. A lot of similar language, just more of it, highlighting the difference. We're certainly putting in our direct email to the members, the monthly email, the webpage. I showed you the scoreboard. What's mostly new here, and many of us have shared this as well in our own social media, MSRs have scripts now when the conversation warrants it, when the conversation goes there and they're afforded an opportunity. And sometimes people are in a hurry, they have a quick question, they don't want to talk. We get that. But when the MSRs are given an opportunity, they're engaging members just to make sure they have access to this information, answer questions, point them to this. So we're doing everything verbally and writing, website, one to all, one to many, and we'll continue to do that. But everything we're doing is not enough. So this has already helped hundreds of members. We appreciate that. And we're sure if others have looked at it, it didn't quite work out for them this time. We get that too. We would ask everybody to do this. So tell somebody else you know. It doesn't cost them anything, and they may get a free or a low-cost HVAC tune-up out of it. So no reason not to share it. That's where I'm going to stop with. Please tell somebody you know about it. We want to get that whole 250,000 out as soon as we can. That is the goal. We're working really hard to make sure it's worth their time. And we'll learn from this and we'll see, is there something we can do later on? And we'll evaluate that and bring it back to you. So it's
Have you had an HVAC company pick up on this yet?
we've had a couple ask if they can advertise it, and our response is, do whatever you want. We're happy to, especially for our members. So if they're in our service territory, there's certainly the potential there. They could at least offer it. We've had a relative of an HVAC company suggest, hey, would you be okay if? We're gonna be careful with branding. We're not gonna endorse one company over another, but we'd encourage all HVAC companies to consider strongly using this as a way to sell their HVAC tune-up and maintenance packages. So absolutely. Any other thoughts on this, the program so far?
I think it's a good program. I'm excited to see how it plays out at the end of the year.
Now that 250 is state funded,
So those, remember
and I remember you mentioning it, but I wasn't sure where the state got the money.
so these are uncashed capital credit checks. Remember, we talked about
Right.
that in April. So that's what that is. The state gives you 50% back. And if the 50% they give you back, you can do these three things, right?
Do we anticipate next year
Next year,
if we
so it
continue?
comes on July 1st of every year. This
Okay.
year, we have about as much coming to it on July 1st as we have in that account, to be honest with you. So
Okay,
we'll see what it looks like next year. We'll learn from this. We'll continue watching other utilities, see what they do well, what works, how our members react to this. We want to make it as good as we can. I mean, this is straight down the middle of the plate. We wanted to have it, so
I
we're
wonder,
gonna make it easy on them.
I wonder what the state does with the other half. Maybe they need to give us all of it back.
I'll drive you down there if you can get it. Let's go.
We've tried. It's members' money.
It is.
For sure,
We've tried.
for sure. Yeah, so I'm thrilled that we can get that part of it and do something productive with it. And I think it's really comforting that it's very clear our membership is very heavily residential focused, so we know we're in the right bucket. We know this is the biggest bang for the buck with heating and cooling. Now it's a matter of just tying that together and making sure more members know about it. So please feel free to share with anybody. HVAC companies are welcome to pick up on that. We encourage them to, especially for our members, for sure. So if there are no other questions about the program, and we'll continue to give you results of this as we go. And you can, everybody can look at the website on a weekly basis and see that $69,000 grow. I'm hoping it grows faster as we get into the the cooling season, as it gets hot. So we'll see how that goes, but we're excited about it, and hopefully there'll be a success story at the end of the year. If there's no other questions about that, I'm happy to move on to agenda item number 6, a Winter Storm Uri debt rider update. And that sounds like a mouthful to say it, so I'm gonna take a quick drink here. So over the past year, I've received a lot of questions about this topic semi-frequently. And I've also heard or observed other questions. And one thing is clear to me, there's still a lot of confusion about it. And so we'll spend just a few minutes setting the stage, looking at a macro level, state level, whatever, then kind of zooming in towards the end of what's our role, what applies to us. So while we will deal with some macro issues, obviously my job is right here in Tri-County, we'll focus on the micro. But just to be clear, this represents a conversation that deals with what's called the Brazos rider on our members' bills. That's where they see that. Really, that all results from the Winter Storm Uri from a few years ago. So with that in mind, I want to set the stage on the wholesale electricity market and how that impacted this. Then we'll get into the state, ERCOT, local levels, and then ultimately we'll spend most of our time on the Tri-County response of what we need to be doing and what we've done. In the wholesale market, transmission side, Texas stands alone in energy independence. Unlike any other state in the union, It's not substantially connected to either the eastern or the western interconnect. There are 7 organized power markets in the US in the eastern and western interconnects, as well as other bilateral markets. Additionally, they are very well tied, intertied together for power flows. As you're aware, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, operates the state's grid, transmission generators. They don't own any of it. They operate it as a market would. They are responsible for delivering electricity to over 26 million Texans. That's roughly 90% of the state's population, and it's a very high percentage of the state's geographic footprint. Most of the state of Texas gets their power supply from ERCOT or from someone in ERCOT. So what you can see here is a little bit of an electrical island. That's going to be important as we get into the next phases for when bad things happen, okay? So we'll be respectful about this topic. We are going to be empathetic, realizing and making a strong distinction between people, life, and financial and economic impacts. We'll be sympathetic to both, but we are going to move very factually through this. According to the National Weather Service, the storm that devastated Texas in February of 2021, it began with the worst thing for an electric utility, a freezing coat of rain, especially for a distribution co-op, because that weighs down lines on the distribution side. But back to the transmission side, freezing rain and drizzle across north and central Texas on February the 11th. I know this is going to be going back down memory road, but we need to kind of go there to set the stage. In some areas, received up to a ½ inch of ice. And then the snowfall began from February 14th to 17th, about 5 inches near DFW, about 4.6 inches in Waco, just to give you an idea of the regional impact, more than 4 inches for over 100 miles around here. Additionally, DFW experienced 139 consecutive hours at or below freezing, while Waco Regional Airport had 205 consecutive hours at or below freezing temperatures. So when we look back, we'll do so with respect and empathy, but 210 confirmed deaths resulted from the storm, leaving families across the state still grieving. On the financial side, the results are staggering. The Federal Reserve Bank of Texas estimated between $80 and $130 billion of damage. That's a very difficult number to estimate. We talk about economic models and the secondary impact. If you think about a business that's shut down, it's relatively straightforward to calculate those costs, but think about the supplier impacts, and the further you get away from there, it is very difficult. Whatever it is, it's catastrophic losses, if you will. A lot of financial losses there. A lot of people's lives change forever. In the next few pages, we're going to talk about the state of Texas, ERCOT, and the PUC responses before we use that as a springboard into the Tri-County, what that did for us, what we're doing about that. So the state response is fairly typical for things like this, and you've seen this for decades. Really, since the early part of this century, more pronounced. It's hard to believe it's about 20 years ago, Hurricane Katrina hit, when federal assistance got a lot of visibility, if you will. Back to that in a minute. But on February 12th, the governor issued a state of emergency for all 254 Texas counties in response to the severity of this storm. That's pretty standard and typical, whether it's a tornado outbreak, whether it's a hurricane, wildfires. There are a variety of events that can declare or trigger that state of emergency. That's standard for a variety of reasons. They're all very important. For electric distribution utilities, this is often the first step or the trigger in getting federal aid. So it's very important from that process. That's when the clock starts for getting some FEMA reimbursement or application for FEMA, which typically reimburse around 75% of losses. Fairly standard, nothing unusual here, but that starts the ball rolling. Now let's look at the ERCOT response. I'm not going to get too deep into this, but at a high level, I've laid out a timeline. Between February 15th and 18th, ERCOT imposed blackouts that impacted most of Texas. Think about the transmission system. This is transmission, not distribution, okay? According to a University of Houston study done in March of 2021, 69% of Texans lost power at some point between the 14th and the 20th. 49% of them lost water during that week as well. Unprecedented damage. Obviously, everyone's familiar with that. What you can see here is a timeline from Saturday the 13th through Friday the 19th. Outages began piling up due to a lot of things. Now, if there are some silver linings, and this is obviously a tragic event, there is better coordination in the gas industry and the power industry going forward. There were some lessons learned. We can feel a little bit better about that. But a lot of things happened there that just compounded. On Sunday, the 14th, ERCOT issued a public plea for Texans to self-curtail, self-reduce. Monday, the 15th, they declared a state of emergency. They were very, very close to a complete collapse of the transmission grid. If that happens for something as big as Texas, that could take weeks or months to black start. It is very difficult to black start. Don't really want to think about that, but that was close to happening. That is why the rolling blackouts occurred, so that they would not have to crash the grid, if you will. And by Friday, February 19th, it was finally stabilized. What that means is there's finally enough generation. You can say there's enough generation, or the temperature is moderated, or a combination of both, but whatever it is, supply equal demand towards the end of the week. That's important because as we get into the next phase, what the Public Utility Commission did, the PUC of Texas regulates ERCOT, obviously. So the PUC intervened and they forced ERCOT to charge market pricing caps, so $9,000 a megawatt hour, the entire time during the state of emergency. The intent was good. The intent was to incentivize generators to either come on or to help Texas import power. If you just go back to the map and look at the transmission lines, there wasn't power to be had.
They could have figured that out after they bumped those prices.
There was no transmission to be had. There was no generation to be had. So having done this in a former life, if prices hit $1,000 a megawatt hour, every generator is on full speed. Going to 9,000 did not produce any more generation. The intent may have been honorable, but the results are disastrous for people that live and work in the ERCOT footprint.
And they left those prices for what, 5 days?
Until Friday, when there was more than enough generation. This decision was heavily litigated all the way to the state Supreme Court, finalized last summer, which affirmed that the PUC had the right to do that. It was done, it's here, just like everybody else that lives and works in the state. That's who's paying the price for it. Generators that were online or available, they got their bag of cash, pure and simple. That's what it is, but we are a distribution co-op. We're not on the grid, okay? Let's get back to what makes us go and what's our part in this. What's this have to do with us? I said we'd use this as a springboard. Well, as you're aware, we put a lot of information out publicly last fall. Tri-County had a $485 million impact from them, okay? So now we'll spend a few minutes talking about that, and what that means to us and our members, and what we did and are doing about it. As you're aware, that was financed in 8 separate loans, $485 million in total. That decision was made in September of 22. One of the most immediate challenges facing this leadership team was that 60 million of that was coming due within 5 months of our goals. In addition to that, another 100 million was coming due September of this year. So for 110 million total, that had to be dealt with. So we're going to go through this a little bit slower. Of that, the first loan for 60 million, it was interest only. It was interest only at a variable interest rate. There was no principal being paid down on it. The second loan of 50 million coming due in October of 25 was also a floating interest rate. So our members were exposed to a lot of interest rate volatility in addition to the situation itself. So it was what it was, a little bit frustrating to say the least, but it was definitely not sustainable in this format. This was perhaps a phase 1 at best, but this was not a sustainable format for 110 million to come due within 36 months. Considering that's out of 435, that's just a very large portion. So one of the first things we want to do was not kick the can down the road. You're aware, and we put it in current conversations last fall, that we did refinance those first 3 loans. We appreciate that for several reasons. First of all, we didn't want that first loan to be interest only forever. We wanted to actually start nailing it down, leaving this better for the next generation than for this generation. So we wanted to actually make principal payments on that. Number 2, we didn't want to expose our members to variable interest rates that go up and down. When you combine that with all the other efforts that were made over the past 12 months, we did not want variability there to wreck or ruin other things we're doing that we're making good progress. And third, we wanted to put a final end date to this thing to make sure we could have it done once and for all. So we did refinance those. I'll talk a bit more about that. But let's take a different perspective. Why did the lenders even make this loan or these loans? 3 reasons, and that's kind of what brings us back to the boardroom right here. Assets were pledged, so obviously they had the assets of the system. The rider that shows up on the bills funds those loans and the expenses and the interest. Then the board's obligation to adjust that rider twice a year if needed to make sure that the lenders are being satisfied. That is the security that you as a lender would require to make those loans.
Is that 6-month, adjustment mandated by statute? Are we under any, I know the state
Yeah.
had those bills passed for the bonds that we didn't get.
Right. This
So-
is just your loan. So I sent these to you last fall. This is just a
Right.
loan between you and the lender. There are no bonds. We're not a municipal, so we're not a government affiliation. These are just loan covenants between you and the lender.
I'm talking about the 6-month true up.
So you've got an obligation to look at it every January and June, where you can adjust it if.
So we're obligated to do that. Oh, the board obligation. Without that, we don't have to, not by statute or.
There is no statute. It's between you and your lender.
Under the laws of the state, Tri-County has the ability to implement a rider without any statute or without any approval of state authorities. Is that?
I'm not sure where you're going. So this.
Well, I'm just
rider-
saying, that rider that we have, is that under any statutes of the state that oversee or give us the ability to do it? Or as a co-op, do we have the ability just to implement a rider on our own without?
So you're aware that every utility that suffered this did the same type of thing, whether they securitized.
Right. I know the ones that went through the state with the bonds through ERCOT had a 6-month true up mandate in the bill.
So that's for people that did.
Right.
That's government
Right.
entities, right?
No, that's for anybody who got that money that ERCOT.
For everybody else that securitized or made loans to the lender, it's just like your loan on your house or your car or whatever else. These are your loan covenants, okay? That's what governs it. Make sense?
Yeah, but so we don't have any statutes that mandate that we do anything with the rider, whether for implementing the rider or.
Why would we?
Well, I mean, you implement a rider and you don't pay any attention to it and you're out of money and you didn't get enough or you didn't spend it where you should have spent it.
I'm not
A
aware.
lot of those statutes are to protect the consumer. And I was just curious if we have any of those mandates from the state, because I don't know all the laws.
So lots of businesses take loans. That's between them and their lender, just like you. And these are between you and your lender.
Right,
Does that make sense?
yeah, but so you're telling me there are no statutes that,
I'm not comfortable with the framework because this is strictly between us and the lender.
okay,
I didn't understand the bond questions this fall, where you're going with bonds, because we've been
Well-
issuing bonds.
I was just curious how whether we had bonds and you pointed it out that we went straight to the lender.
No, we didn't issue bonds, and I'd be surprised if any co-op would, because we have access to pretty good capital markets. So this is why the lenders made the loans. If you look at the results, they weren't initially set up that great. When you look at the rider revenue minus the expense, it's about 2.4 and headed in the wrong direction. And most of that was in the calendar year 2023. That was not a sustainable path. What concerned me the most about this, looking at literally on day one, seeing where it's 2 million upside down after the first year or so, it's headed the wrong direction. And no principal's being repaid on the first loans. I mean, this is like red alarms, both on, this is a concern, right? This is how it was going. And we were exposing the members to variable interest rates. Not good, not sustainable, not cool, right? Given all this, you will recall that Dustin and I went back to the lenders. We refinanced loans 1, 2, and 3. And let's look at the results of that and how that worked out, okay? By doing that, when we did, we saved close to $1 million a year in lower interest expense, lower interest rates. With that $1 million, or most of that $1 million, that's enough to start making principal payments on loan 1, which is what we did. Loan 1 will mature, loans 1, 2, and 3 will mature in 2047, the end of the rider, to have complete closure there. Saving close to $1 million a year in lower interest expense allowed us not only to start making principal payments on loan 1, but it also assured us that we didn't need to go back in and raise the rider rate. When we go back and look at the schedule of those 8 loans, from the time they were refinanced, there were 2, 3, 10, 15, and 20 years. Well, now these 3 are refinanced for the remainder of 23 years. These 3 10s will come up in 7 years. So there's a period of stability here where whatever happens to interest rates won't impact that rider. And we're making progress on the principal for the whole thing, for all the loans, including loan 1. So there's a window between now and the next opportunity to do anything. We're actually making progress. We're not kicking the can down the road. Those refinancing, as the rating agency said, was genius because of that and things like that. So we can see now that we should have a stable rider for the next few years at a minimum. That's encouraging because with everything else locked in, with the wholesale power supply locked in for 5 years, if ERCOT does have to do rolling blackouts or whatever ERCOT does, we hate that, we'll sympathize, we will comply because we're required to do so, but it will not financially hit our members. They will not be financially exposed to the volatile ERCOT market. They are not exposed to variable interest rates. So not exposing them to that for the foreseeable future was a part of the strategy we've talked about for over a year with internal budget discipline, fixing the wholesale power supply, doing all the things we've talked about to live off of our means, no more subsidies. And you're seeing results of that already in the financials, the annual report you sold out for yourself. That's long before 1 penny has ever been received from an asset sale. So the misnomer of, oh, you're selling assets, we intend to. And we've got things on the market, but not 1 penny has showed up from that. And we're still making modified debt service coverage. We're still paying down the line of credit. You may have noticed the president's report, and good asked last month about this. It's always there. The line of credit and long-term debt updates are very encouraging. Over the last 11 months, this team is net zero on that line of credit. Stop right there, net zero. When there's a 5-year history of every month or every other month of leaning on it. Not 1 penny of asset sales. We're probably going to hit 12 months. Lord willing, nothing bad happened, storms of that nature, things of that nature. We're probably going to hit 12 months, and you might hear about that in the next few weeks. We're excited about that because what we're doing is working. It's not being artificially set up. This was done before anything else took effect. So we're excited to prove we can live within our means. It's sustainable. There is an end to that awful winter storm Uri that all of Texas was exposed to, not just Tri-County, not just this region, but the ERCOT footprint. We're excited that the members don't have to see an increase in the rider in the foreseeable future, in the next several years, certainly, and that we can make progress on principal note 1 without a rider increase. So those are a series of wins that the team deserves a lot of credit for. They worked really hard. One other thing I'll point out, when the loans were set up, Some really expensive consultants were used. And the loans were refinanced in what the rating agency called genius. Just two good old boys. And sweat equity. Didn't cost the members fancy consulting fees. These consultants made a ton of money. And it just wasn't necessary. So we're doing the right things. We're doing it the right way. We're getting results. We want to give members more and more results. But I am proud of this team. They're getting a lot of good things from members. Here's another way we could show that. In addition to the PCRF being stable, this is another thing that can be stable and they don't have to fear. So we can't undo Winter Storm Uri. Nobody can. But I feel like this team has more than proven we can make it as good as it can be. So questions about the rider status update? I know we could have looked at this last month. We just had a lot of other things. Given that it looks very stable, I'll continue to update you as we approach those 2 6-month intervals. You will see that gap slowly catch up over the next few years. Questions about the rider status? All right, with that in mind, Chair, I have completed the items on the regular portion of the agenda.
Okay, thank you for joining us this evening, and that concludes the member open session portion of our meeting.